There we go. Yes, that works. Yeah. Well, good afternoon. I was asked to talk about a subject that is current in some places of the world, and maybe I would give you some little context in history of ways branding has been seen over time. I mean, initially, the human race was just looking for shelter. Then beyond shelter, there was architecture that created some emotion beyond shelter, had a message to it. And sometimes the branding came in the form of purely the architecture. Let's say one could say that Versailles was branding the King of France. It was their way of expressing their style or their power or their vision, for example. And that same kind of branding didn't necessarily have a name associated with something that the public was seeking, but maybe what the public was looking up to, or the other way. But in recent times, branding has had many forms of conveying itself, and of course, the fashion and hospitality industries were the first ones to create a brand. It wasn't just the Hotel Savoy or the Ritz. It was, it became, as they multiplied, a brand because of the reputation. And reputation is what sets off branding. And we know the hospitality industry has historically had a concern or interest in branding. But in recent times, in certain markets, it's been also residential. And I would say the beginning of branding of residential was associated with hotels. It was generally a portion of a tower or a tower next to a hotel that were sort of part of the hotel component. And more recent times, there's branding with hotel names that are not even a hotel. It's just a branding of a building after the hotel, but it has implications. So I'm going to start by showing you some projects. And the first one I show you is Ritz-Carlton Residences. And it's on the waterfront in Miami, where I'm from. That's where I practice. But these are the brands that we've worked with in our career. We are architects and we design hotels, but we also design residences. I'm talking condominiums, high-rise residences. And it's all these names that you see here imply something different. They have a different purpose. And these are the brands that we've worked with. But and that list is moving rather quickly. I mentioned this project, and I'll tell you what brands it, in addition to the name, is the service, the amenities, the way the building is laid out, what is included in the use of that building. And you can see the top of the building that implies luxury. There's 4 penthouses with private swimming pools that cascade along a very sensuous form of a building, and you see some of the interiors are practically like in a hotel. And there's dining and coffee place and children's areas and spa, amazing resort pool. You could be in a resort, in a Ritz-Carlton resort. And a lot of the public bought into that, and including the sacrificing of an upper level for a clubhouse. You can see in one of the images the view to the water. But sometimes that brand is not only a hotel. Sometimes the brand implies not just service, it implies style. This is the Fendi Chateau, and you see how the building is implying a certain elegance of form. It's almost like a textile weave in the facade. And those buyers were not seeking hospitality services, even though there are in the building. But for them, the image of themselves is the brand, the design appeal of that brand. I want to add to that in a second a few other factors. But you can see the style of the building is very slick. You could be in an amazing store of that brand, and you see how even the pool is very pure. It's quite different. It is it's like a lagoon. It is very. It has a very different expression than what you saw in the Ritz-Carlton residences, and look at the purity of the spaces and the artwork. It was a very different approach that symbolized what that brand reflected. And I want to say, therefore, what are the choices that people make? Because for some people, the brand today, how can I describe it? Today, there are people who the brand conveys their personality and who they are. But for others, today, people buying a home or buying a condominium are always thinking, is it a good investment? And there's a perception that a good investment is because there's a brand that will last forever in terms of value. And this is the W Residences, a very different approach because W is more of a lifestyle hotel. There's hotel and 2 residential towers, restaurants. You can see the amazing arrival with the artwork. As you arrive to the hotel, you can see the restaurant in the within it, the spa that is very posh and unique spa where you see that chandelier over the hot and cold plunges. It's a different approach than, for example, SLS, who is actually also a lifestyle, but maybe younger, cooler, more hip. And this is another one of the branded hotels that we have done. And this has hotel and residences on top of each other. The previous one I showed you, the hotel has residences, but has 2 other towers that are purely residential, branded after the hotel. In this case, it is a hotel in the lower levels and the residences above. Now, the Cipriani family started doing hotels. We've done their hotel in Miami, and we're doing a couple more in several locations, actually more than a couple. But they also went into the branded residences world, and this is the Mr. C residences, and it's a different approach. These are very finished. You feel you're in a yacht. It's right in at the yacht club, the marina, and it has sort of a nautical feel that it conveys, being them coming from Venice, a waterfront location. It makes sense that there's a nautical feel to the exterior as well as the interior. You can see in a second the feeling at the arrival and the feeling inside with the uses of the wood, almost like one of those Riva launches. It's also the interiors that manages the messaging of the brand. And these were, by the way, being where it is, not only large apartments, also small pied-à-terres for people from New York that come for the weekend, that come for the season, or who have guests visiting. And this was a very successful project, and you feel here some of the translation into the new Mr. C residences in Dubai, just completed, where it's done very well for the same reason of the scale and the connection, and more intimate scale than a very large tower. It's just another product that is quite interesting. And you can see here the same idea that there's their brand. Their brand is about that tone of wood, about the nautical use of materials, including the chrome columns, like the chrome detailing that you see in a yacht. These are some of the views of the recently completed project in Dubai. Boutique, small project compared to other things we do that are 70 stories. This is actually quite special. Some people rather be in a small building like the Fendi Chateau, 12 stories, or this one, instead of being in a tall tower. And this gives you some of the feel for the place that is now completed and getting occupied. Now, I'll tell you some other brands that are going in a more spectacular direction. This is our new St. Regis Residences. It is it's 2 towers that are entirely residential, but at the base, there's a clubhouse, 2 restaurants, an amazing spa, theaters, meeting space, beach club. There's everything that comes with what would have been a hotel, even though, and includes 14 guest rooms like a hotel that the residents can use to host their guests when they come to visit. This is a tall tower. These are 70 stories each. I mean, 170, 169, 66 or something. And you can see here some of the clubhouse feeling, the clubhouse in between the 2 towers, and the amazing swimming pool and club in between the 2 towers that are shared by the 2 towers. It is, and it has, St. Regis elegance and materials, but in a very bold statement in the skyline, the 2 elliptical towers. There are other types of branding like we're doing for Rosewood in Palm Beach, where the building is more low-slung, like you expect in Palm Beach. There's a marina for mega yachts. There's villas that come with a dockage for the boat. There's a whole sports complex like you were in a country club. And you can see the touch of elegance that is expected from a Rosewood brand. In a contrast, in an urban location, this is the new Baccarat that is under construction right now. And Baccarat is about glass and hanging chandeliers, and this is at the mouth of the river looking out to Biscayne Bay. And you can see the flow of the lines of the crystalline balconies as they descend down to the ground and to the river, and how the balconies form this sort of cascade, almost like the river has been painted in the facade. But when you think of branding, sometimes comes with a specific color. For example, that red, orangey red color that you see in all Baccarat stores and Baccarat products, and that is their color that reappears in details throughout the building. And of course, the crystal chandeliers throughout. The arrival as if you were in Europe through a road that leads you into the tower through a very romantic pathway, as you see on the upper left. It is sometimes that in the same complex there are 2 brands. The younger brand, Viceroy, the more, so to say, elegant brand, but Baccarat. These 2 projects coexist within a block, and it is perfectly feasible that there are 2 products and 2 offerings within the same complex. In a very different kind of brand that we work with is Edition. This is Edition Residences as well. This has no hotel. It is purely residential, and it is, but it is in the pure and more slick style of what you would expect in an Edition hotel, integrating the greenery and the stone and the wood into the building. It is Ritz-Carlton, a brand that we work with, and sometimes we have to create geography. Like you see here, the lagoon, it is on the marina, the water is in front of you, but there's mangroves that are preservation mangroves, and therefore Ritz-Carlton chose, let's keep and preserve the environment, and we'll build behind and create our own geography, almost like Bali-esque in Naples, Florida. And these are some of the views as you enter. You see the beautiful mangroves and the Gulf of Mexico at a distance, and the lagoon in the foreground. It is an appealing geography that is quite different than the obvious one that you would normally find in other waterfront residences. It is But going back to Cipriani, it's not always a low-rise building. This is a 75-story building. And you can see the feel. Huh? You see the exterior with the curving lines. Again, their nautical messaging that translates into the forms in that two terrace, in the two swimming pools, the exercise pool, the recreational pool that is connected to, of course, a restaurant, which is what you would expect in a product that is a Cipriani product. But there is a branding that is similar to their original place, the Harry's Bar in Venice. You can see here some of the views of the terraces and the units with their flowing lines. I show you that this because it's unique. This is branded after a restaurant. Part of hospitality are restaurants. And actually it's unusual. I mean, Cipriani is a restaurant that ventured into hotels and then ventured into food and beverage. But in Casa Tua, a famous Italian restaurant in the United States, you can see that transformation of branding into a wine bar, two restaurants, a market, a gourmet market. Everything that has to do with food and gastronomy is conveyed in the branding of this building. And but I want to alert, I know there's hotel and fashion branding that would like to hear that that's the only option. But there are some places where the address is the branding. Very few places in the world can carry that. Central Park, Brickell Avenue in Miami, maybe Champs-Élysées, maybe Hyde Park, maybe Park Avenue, but really counting with your fingers, there's no real street that you can identify saying Hong Kong or Shanghai or most of the great cities in the world don't have a branding after an address. But in this case, our client branded the project with the address on Brickell Avenue. And it's done amazingly well because of where it is, where the address is. He could have picked a location that was right on the water or on a park, but he chose the street address. And the street address is also branding, but I say in very, very few places in the world can that happen. I show you a couple. In a second, there's one more location I didn't mention where branding can be the name of the street. And it is, you can see here the images of the lobbies and the sort of urban pool. This is in the middle of a financial district, but it is a possibility. And you can see here some of the images of the project, slick slab edge and curves and how it relates to the bay beyond. It is Ritz-Carlton that keeps coming because it's a very popular residential branding in the world and United States. And you can see how Ritz-Carlton has carried its message across the country in the United States and now abroad. And it's done a pretty good job of presenting itself, but there are also others like Pendry, like the Pendry Hotel in California, that are still cool hotels that are also perceived as more fun, refined fun. And this is one of our other branding projects that is quite different in terms of the perception in the marketplace. And it also has done well. This is a downtown hotel. It's not a resort hotel. It's sort of urban hip, and yet it is elegant urban hip. And it's done quite well, and others are jumping into the fray. This is our first Kempinski that we're doing with townhouses and tower with rooftop pools and other amenities in the design district of Miami, where the entrance to the building has sculptures, the lobby is all art, because it is in the design district. We take this branding to overseas projects. This is Thompson Hotel in Puerto Vallarta, Mexico, and we've done several of such projects in the Mexican front where branding does make a difference in terms of investment, and because in locations in Mexico, it is sort of a safe bet. Now this is another W that now is early stage in the works. what is called W2, the new brand that is more elegant, so to speak, and maybe less hip, still with a rooftop bar and so forth. And there's hotel and residences vertically integrated. So this does include hotel, and including hotels is still in the works. I mean, this is the Thompson in Mexico City on the main boulevard on Reforma, and that is an address that could have survived probably without a brand, but the client felt that the Thompson name assured the investor and the purchaser of a quality, but also because the hotel is there. You cannot have a hotel without branding the residential on top of it. It would have been illogical. And these are brands that are happening everywhere. We continue to do more SLS, always with art. This is a famous artist who did the facade of the garage, and sometimes is a low-rise sort of cool hotel. It's not always what we call a luxury hotel. We all know the Nomad, like north of Madison in New York, the Nomad in Los Angeles. This is another Nomad that we're doing that is a horizontal hotel that is, there are young people who still want branding. Tell their friends, I live in the Nomad residences. And but notice there's a restaurant there, the same Casa Tua restaurant, gastronomy, is very powerful today. And it is the foodie culture that we live in has taken over and has become a pretty much of a defining moment. And it was not enough to just have a hotel. You needed to have great food. Hyatt is entering the fray. This is a new Hyatt Hotel and Thompson Hotel, two hotels with two branded residences, Hyatt and Thompson residences, on what is a much larger project, of course, you can see on the river. This branding sometimes translates also to service apartments, to luxury rentals. This is the Mandarin Oriental in Shanghai that our office designed as part of a mixed-use complex that we also did with office buildings and so forth. And there are residences that are expensive, large residences that are managed by the hotel. And you can see the amenities that come with such residences. And the same thing happens with the East Hotel, also another Hong Kong brand in the United States as well, where the hotel and residences are coexisting in terms of rental residences, luxury rentals, plus two residential towers that are condominiums. And I show you here at the end another address brand. This is on Sunset Boulevard in Los Angeles. And obviously, Sunset Boulevard is Sunset Boulevard, and it has its own cachet in the California world. So what are the trends in the luxury marketplace? Unfortunately for investors, they require a lot of amenities. You expect for a brand to deliver amenities, and there's a constant invention of amenities. And some are starting to be less important, like indoor cinema, but maybe outdoor cinema, but less so with the way you can watch at home. But there are certain things that are forever the same, the wellness aspect, the fitness aspect, but chef's kitchens and hair salons, or a way to wash your car or deal with your pets, or have all become essential to the branding. And this is a big load of square footage that burdens the efficiency of the building, but is generally well compensated by the sales, the speed of sales, and the value of sales. And rooftops are obviously one of those things that have become sort of a given of importance, and having the terraces that are ample for being able to furnish. There's, of course, after the pandemic, the interest in living outdoors. And we always hear from the brokers that it's the closets, it's everything. It is, it's really annoying for architects, frankly, but the closets are the first thing the buyers ask about. They practically don't care about the bathtub or the kitchen. They just want to know what's the size of the closet. I can see some smiles there. about the importance of the closet, right? It's unbelievable. But you know, we live in a consumer society. It's very easy to shop. You can order things on the internet, and the boxes arrive. The package room has to be huge in the building, otherwise they clutter the lobby, and that ends up in a closet. The custom kitchen is a nightmare for us architects because people think they're all gourmet, you know, and you gotta have several versions for the different taste in a kitchen, and that is a problem when you give too many options to the customer because they get confused and you really don't want them to leave the sales center without a signature. So we try to keep it under control with a few options, but if there's one amenity that symbolizes that you've made it is golf. For whatever reason, whether you play golf or not, you think if there's golf, you have some kind of standard that is a higher standard of other people that live in your building. Maybe not yourself, you're not a golfer, but you like the idea that there are golfers in your building. They must be doing pretty well if they have time to play golf. And so this gives you, the theater that you see there is probably the fastest fading away product in the buildings. And but the wine is instead the rising one. The wine room where you can have your closet, everything in the right temperature. You know, there's a symbol of sophistication about wine. And it's funny because not everybody uses it. Some people don't care about wine. But when they hear there's a wine room in the building, the mind thinks, well, this is the kind of building I want to be in. There must be some wine collectors. And, you know, these are the classic ones, of course, the simulators and the fixing your bike and the a place for the kids to play. I mean, these are things that we cannot ignore. But in a branded residence, you have to capture everybody, the young, the old. Even the old want the kids' room for the grandchildren to want to come visit. So in the end, doesn't matter what age, because if you have grandchildren, you have children, doesn't really matter. It is that it is enticement. I've heard from the salespeople that retired people want a playroom for the kids, and that's the reason. Otherwise, they don't come visit. And so this gives you a general sense of some of the ideas that we include. I mentioned the food and beverage, the sports, and I got to give you just one little warning that I've had in the last couple of years. There's a rage about paddle, about pickleball, about all these new sports that don't take as much space as tennis courts. And it was a rage, and everybody wanted to put a pickleball court in their project and a paddle court. And now we have in our hands big fights because there are people who want to play and people who don't want to hear the noise. And it's become an issue, the noise of the hard paddle that makes pack, you know, and we're starting to pull away from some of these offerings that may be controversial, often controversial after people move in. They didn't realize that court was going to make that noise, and we're starting to get that feedback from brokers and buyers about those little things that are that look like they're a real feature in the building, and then it comes to hit you back with a negative perception of the tranquility of living in a luxury branded residence. So I gave you the overview of what I see in my world as an architect and a designer, and what I see as the evolution of branding in the work I do. Thank you. Do I have to ask questions? No. You want me to answer questions? No.
Yes, good evening. I saw that many of the brands are related to, let's say, hospitality that we know, Ritz-Carlton. So what's your opinion of, let's say, having different brands entering the market? Suppose nothing related to the past, like me, let's say Hermès or Louis Vuitton or something like that. We know we are already working with through brands like Cheval Blanc. So is there enough space in the market for new brands?
Well, I love your question because what's happening here is when you sign up a brand, there's a radius restriction. You can't do one down the street. And when developers see certain markets, by the way, the branding market is good in places where there are investors and or where people don't know the market well enough that the brand gives assurance, like Dubai or Miami or Mexico or Sao Paulo, or you don't need branding, for example, for now in residential, for example, in Paris, or it's sort of pretty obvious. You're lucky if you found something. But when you have a competitive market of new product and new buyers, new arrivals who don't know the town, and there are thousands of people. I mean, somebody have 500 a day move from New York to Florida. They don't know what is what. The brand gives them the assurance. Now, however, to your question, with that branding of hotels, they're running out. And you notice there's a Fendi there. And I recently got a call for one of the car brands to brand after an automobile. I mean, a fancy car, of course, will help the brand. And I have a new one I can't show until they announce, right? But another well-known Italian fashion brand that is known for, that is unique and very good taste. It is so, there is a search for brands by developers, and there's not that many other hotel brands, that everybody is in the market. So yes, they are looking for other symbols of quality or symbols of prestige or symbols or style, or anything that has so much notoriety that is a guarantee of the investment. So yes, there is an entry by the car world, the fashion world, the restaurant world, that is not the hotel world. And that is, I see it, you already saw some after fashion, after gastronomy, and I think there's some others that about luxury cars and so forth.
Thank you. Considering the plan of expansion of, let's say, hoteleries here in Saudi Arabia, and is your opinion for sure, you think there is possibility, let's say, or to open a market? We are not in Paris, we are not in Sao Paulo, we are in Riyadh, so it can be a new market for this kind of...
I think any new market needs branding for the newcomer who doesn't know which street, which neighborhood, or am I in the right place, or is the developer going to give me the right product? When you see a brand, the brand has a technical services department, and they are overseeing the quality of the design, the quality of the products, because it's their reputation. And that's the guarantee to the buyer. So with a growing market that is growing at this speed, it's likely that the brand helps the buyer feel that they're gonna get the right product. Remember, you gotta rely on what the developer is gonna give you, but in this case, you can rely on what the brand is gonna demand of the developer. And that is the assurance. So yes, I see the Saudi Arabian market as ripe for branding for that reason, because uncertainty or let's say lack of information or knowledge of the market is compensated by the branding.
Thank you.
Okay, you have got all the questions. Thank you.
Hello, Bernardo. Thank you very much for such an impressive presentation. I would like to know how challenging it is when you start the concept of a new project about a new branded residence to keep the identity of this brand at the same time that you keep your own identity.
Well, I never thought about it. No, it's just that I get a call because somebody thinks I will understand the brand. You know, it's they think I'm gonna be sensitive and react, but they want still architecture. You know, and I think let's separate architecture and interior design, because none of these brands have necessarily an architectural identity, but they have an identity in materiality, in the fabrics, in the finishes, in the color palette. There is a line of thinking that is related to what their products are that is easier in the touch and feel of the interiors, more so than the architecture. In the architecture, what they want is something that looks either dramatic or refined or minimalist or very expressive, but I generally have more freedom. I feel bad sometimes for the interior designer because they do have to really be in the line of thinking of the brand, because you see Baccarat insists on the red, you know, and the chandeliers. And maybe normally he wouldn't put chandeliers in design in red, but he's got it. But the job was well done. It looked very refined, and it complied with some of the brand standards, you know. So, but the brand design department is actually a good police, so to speak, because they are there watching to guarantee the stature of the brand and that it is not going to be corrupted. So to some extent, they are that guarantee that I'm talking about for the buyer. And that's why the buyer trusts to buy in that brand. It is, no, I think I generally, if I'm called and I sort of know what brand is going to be, we know what to do that would integrate some hints of what the brand would be. But I have to tell you, in many of these cases, the brand came after I had designed the building. Remember, we have architects, we have to get entitlements first. We have to go, nobody wants to sign a brand on a project that is not approved. It would damage the brand reputation. So I gotta get a project that is entitled, that the authorities have approved, that is a real project. Imagine how terrible for a brand announcing a project and then it gets rejected, or it takes years to get approval. Imagine. So they can't afford that risk. So generally I'm there ahead, and the brand has to like what I do, and generally they like it, you know, luckily. You know, so but the interior designer comes after the approval, you understand? So he's got to deal with that logic. Many of them are also, frankly, very good at translating the brand message.
Thank you so much.
Okay.
So thank you so much, Bernardo. That was amazing. Please give him a round of applause.